Hello and welcome to our November 20-minute training. And so I am Aisha, the CEO and president of AIB Marketing. And each month we try to bring a different expert to provide insight on various topics. Most of the times they're topics that I have either had experience with or that I've had a client or someone that I work with that has mentioned it as a pain point or a challenge or something that they need assistance with. And so we wanted to make it a very easily accessible space for you to learn more about whatever that topic is, get some insight. And then if you want to dive deeper, then we've always got the opportunity to learn more from our expert. And so today we are very excited to talk about a topic that is very familiar to many. And so if you are here with us live, then feel free to drop any questions that you have into the chat as we're talking, because this 20 minutes goes by quick. And so every month we have a different topic. I'll make sure to drop a link in the chat for our YouTube so that you can check out some of the previous topics. And then you can always email us if there's an area that you're interested in. And so we're going to dive right in, not to take up too much time. Usually I read the bio of our guest, but today I am going to welcome Ron Price. Thank you for joining us, and ask, Ron, how did you get started? And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and this topic that we're getting ready to dive into?
I'd be happy to do that, Aisha. Thank you. And by the way, I don't mind you calling me an expert, because I am. I used to be a PERT, but I'm not anymore. So that makes me an expert. Okay, sorry about that. Obviously, I'm not a comedian. I saw an ad in my local paper back in 1987. That's last century, for crying out loud, last millennium, that they were starting a program called divorce mediation. And having experienced a divorce, I was curious about what that was. And I found out that it was a program that helped people who are getting divorced with children to do it as peaceably as possible. It's a difficult situation for everybody to go through. And boy, if you're not careful, you can cause damage that could take decades to heal from, if ever. And so I got intrigued by that. And for the next 29 years of my life, I mediated between divorcing parents. For 29 years, I put myself between people who were at odds with each other. And if that doesn't tell you I'm a sick man, I don't know what will. But it was always a great joy to watch people, they come into my office bitter and hostile and adversarial, and they'd leave, not best buds, but less friction, if you know what I'm trying to say here. And that was a joyful experience for me. And through the trainings that I went to and the experiences I had, I ended up writing 3 books. You see them right above me here. Play Nice at Your Sandbox at Work. 2016, 2018, I wrote Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Home. And 2020, I think it's a stupid title, but Play Nice in Your Sandbox at Church. I wouldn't think we need a book telling Christians they ought to get along and how to do it. I thought the Bible already did that pretty well, but oh well.
Sometimes you need a little extra help.
Oh man. So since then, I've also developed some training classes for the workplace, some videos, teaching what I call relationship CPR. And that's what we agreed we're going to talk about today. CPR in this case stands for conflict prevention and resolution. Conflict is inevitable, Aisha. Damaged relationships are optional. So that's what I hope to be able to share with you and your listeners. Thank you so much for having me, by the way. Appreciate it.
We are glad. And it's a really important topic, especially now. I was really, really excited to participate in the event that you had last week, just talking about the holidays and how much stress it can cause amongst families. And so I'm glad to be able to provide this information to those that are with us and that will be watching on how to really navigate when it comes to relationships, because they're so important. And so, as you said, we can definitely do some things to help manage and make sure that our relationships go well. And so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time. We want to dive right in so that people can get some good information. And you said, so you're always a fun person to be with, because you always have some good things to make us laugh and smile. And we're going to make this time fun by doing some spontaneous things. And so you have 30 tips to be able to share with us. And I'm going to get to pick a number. And I'm
Yes,
going to
you
even
are.
spread the joy to some of the people that are here with us to have them pick a number. But I'm going to pick the first number. And
All
it
right.
is my favorite number. I don't know how or why, but the number 2
Number
always
2.
is a good one for me. So please tell us, what is tip number
Ooh,
2?
ooh, you picked a good one. There's a term that some of your listeners may have heard called emotional hijacking. Now, in essence, you have a part of your brain that thinks, it's called the frontal lobe. You have your brain that feels, it's called the deep limbic system, or most people know more of the amygdala. And we need both portions of our brain, obviously, with the rest as well. But all too often, we make decisions, thinking decisions from the feeling brain. And Aisha, that's usually a mistake. That's called emotional hijacking, where your emotions will be so strong, so lit up, so on fire, they'll hijack your thinking, and you're capable of doing road rage or who knows what else. And so you just have to be mindful of that concept, especially if you're dealing with someone else who you suspect might be emotionally hijacked, that they're more in their emotional brain than their thinking brain. And there's a whole bunch of various tools and tips and techniques I have to avoid that. But let me see what else I wanted to cover on number 2. Oh yeah, all right. Timeout signal is a great way to do that. A great way to prevent emotional hijacking, but you got to do it the right way. You got to do it the right way. So often, if a conversation is escalating, the volume is going up, the intensity is going up, the threat level at times is going up, boy, you got to stop that. It's not going to stop on its own. What a lot of people will do is say, oh, timeout, and they'll walk away. Bad move, bad move. Because you've left the other person wondering, well, are we ever going to talk about this? Are you leaving me? Are you leaving our relationship? What's going on? They don't know. So what you have to do is call timeout for how long? In other words, Aisha, I can never imagine this happening, but you and I are getting into an argument. We're not at our best, and it's not going anywhere. I can say to you, Aisha, you know what? Hold on. I need a timeout. How about if I come back in about an hour or two and we pick it up then? Or, you know what? I think we need a break. How about if we get together at 3 o'clock? Let's have a cup of coffee and we'll talk about it then. You're stopping the negative interaction, giving yourself a chance to calm back down and regroup when cooler heads might prevail. So one tip to avoid emotional hijacking is have a timeout signal, but please remember, whoever calls the timeout is responsible to call the time in. And one more before I turn it back to you for the next number. 2 things you can say to another adult. You can say, I need a timeout, or I think we need a timeout. Please don't ever say to another adult, I think you need a timeout. you will quickly find out how much they do.
Yeah, that may spark a different amount of conflict there. Understood, but that makes perfect sense, because if you do leave it in limbo and open, then they don't have any kind of resolution or idea of when you may be able to return to the conversation. So I
Right.
appreciate.
But you don't want to try to converse when one or both are in that emotionally agitated state. It's not going to be a good conversation. We've all been there, done that. We've all tried.
And like you said,
Yes.
awareness is extremely important. Just being aware that you're in that emotional state as well.
Right. Right.
Okay, so I'm going to allow for somebody that is here participating with us, an attendee, to put a number in the chat, any number between 1 and 30, except for 2, because we've
Except for
already
2.
gone over tip number 2. Oh, okay, 16. We've got a request for
16. Ooh,
16.
that's a good one. You'll hear me say that a lot. By the way, let me share something else. I went to conferences for like 8 years in a row on relationship skills, and I learned from the best of the best of the best. So I'm not sharing Ron Price's wisdom. I'm sharing with you what I've learned from so many different sources that oftentimes I forget where they even came from. This one I do know. This comes from PrepInc.com. Prep Inc. is Prevention and Relationship Enhancement Program. I think that's what PrEP stands for. But number 16 talks about hidden issues. if you're in a dispute with someone else, there's the surface issue, Aisha, with this is what we think we're talking about. But underneath that is a deeper issue. And oftentimes underneath that is an even more deep issue that is totally hidden. We don't realize it. And that explains why in some relationships, if you find the same issue coming up every so often, here we go again, because you've never identified and dealt with that deeply hidden issue. And so you'll put a Band-Aid on it. It'll go down for a while, but over time, it's going to rise back to the surface. You'll put a Band-Aid on it. It'll go back down, but over time, it's going to come back up. So a couple of ways to approach that. Let me give you the easiest one first. If you're in a dispute with someone, you're having an issue, whatever, say, why is this important to you? Or why does this matter to you? Or why does this bother you? Whatever, just get started with a why question, really seeking to understand the other person's point of view. You can't play a game with this. You've got to be willing to understand them if you want them to understand you. And by the way, you do. That's another universal. We all want to be understood by the important people in our lives. So come up with a why question. Why do you think we keep getting into this? Whatever they say, you can paraphrase it back to make sure you heard them correctly, but then say, well, why do you think that's so? Listen for the answer. And again, okay, so you think it's this and this. Well, what do you think's causing that? We're doing the 7 levels of why, which I think comes from Simon Sinek, Why Ask Why. But you're digging deep. You're causing the other person to do some exploration. They may not know. You say, why does that bother you? They may honestly not know. But by gently, politely, civilly having that discussion, well, why do you think that is? So we are digging deep, not me versus you. Let's figure out what's at the base of our conflicts. Why is that important to you? And then it's my turn. I'll do some digging, and hopefully we can get to the bottom of it, figure out what the problem is, fix it, and it goes away forever. So don't have time to get fully into it, but another way to do that is the love talk, LUV. Most people, when they're sideways with each other in conflict, they talk in the shoot and reload method of communication. And Aisha, you've probably never heard that, but you know what it is. You've
sure do.
we fire off, and then we pause while the other babbles on about something, but we're not listening. We're reloading so that we can fire off again. I'm guilty as charged, I promise. Very common, very ineffective, very damaging to relationships. So the love talk is listen, understand, validate. Listen, understand, validate. And by validate, it does not mean you agree with the other person. It does not mean you disagree with the other person. It means you understand where they're coming from. You show them, prove to them that you understand, and it's okay for them to feel that way. You validate their right to, even if you feel differently or believe differently. The love talk is a great remedy to understand the hidden issues, as is the 7 levels of why. So love number 16. Can't do 2, can't do 16. What's next?
The next is number 7. We actually had 2 requests for number 7. So that one must be really, really good.
Right. Ooh, the XYZ technique. That's a good one. And again, this comes from Prep Inc. also. They were very instrumental in my training. I did a lot of training with them. When you're upset with somebody, Aisha, and you can't just blow it off. I mean, a lot of things, you know what, just blow it off. It's just them being them, and you take the bad with the good, and you can overlook a lot more things than you think you can. I'm talking to all of us. We can overlook. If we're tired, if we're stressed, if we're hungry, if we're already agitated, it's harder to overlook little things. But when we're at our best, we can overlook a lot of little things. But some people in your life are going to do activities treat you in certain ways that you can't overlook it. It's damaging the relationship. You've got to confront it.
Mhm.
Here's how you do it. The XYZ technique. When you do X in situation Y, I feel Z. When you showed up late for that appointment that we had with the realtor last Tuesday, I felt disrespected. Now, you could have said, you know what, you didn't even show up for that. Where's that going to take the conversation? Up, down, or neutral? Big time
Way
down.
down.
Way down.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you're focusing on the behavior and just letting the person know how it makes you feel. You're not name calling, you're not attacking them, you're attacking the issue. You're attacking whatever it is that bothers you. You know, when you come home at the end of the day and just throw your coat over the couch, I feel like you don't appreciate that we try to keep a nice house here. I feel. You can use it for positive too. You know, when you stopped off last week when I was sick and brought me that ice cream, I felt so valued by you, so appreciated.
Mm.
X, Y, Z. When you do X, whatever the behavior is, in situation Y, that's just to add clarity and specificity so they know what you're talking about. You know, when you do that thing, well, what thing? You know, no, they don't. When you do X in situation Y, how does that make you feel? I feel discouraged. I feel frustrated. I feel disrespected. I feel, and hopefully the person's going to say, well, I don't want you to feel that way. I'll work on fixing that.
And this is
XYZ technique, a great way to voice a concern when you need to.
This is great for, I know we mentioned it, that all of these techniques are good for personal and for business, but I am thinking specifically about a business relationship with a coworker. And we all have, like you said, good and bad days. Some are up, some are down. And so being able to communicate clearly in this way kind of helps on both sides to be
When
able
you
to
when you
prevent.
didn't turn in your part of our report on time last Wednesday, I felt cheated. I felt, whatever.
Hmm.
Now again, you could say,
Absolutely.
why didn't you
Absolutely.
attack the behavior, never the person.
So I've got one more number, and then I see a question in the chat. So we asked for number 29, which is not the last, but the second to the last tip on your list. What is
29.
29
Ooh,
for
that's a good one.
conflict prevention
That's a good one.
resolution?
Conflict prevention and resolution obviously involves change. Something's got to change. If we keep doing what we're doing and it's causing a problem, then we're going to continue with problems. Now, it's an interesting statement that I heard once. People don't resist change nearly as much as they resist being changed. When I heard that, Aisha, a light bulb went off in me. We can all think back to times when we chose to make a change. We chose to move someplace else, work someplace else, be in a relationship with somebody else. We chose it. We're probably still glad about that today. We still are happy we made that change. We can also think back to times when people said you are going to do something different, and we might still harbor resentment or resistance to that. So that's one element of change is try to help the other person decide that they're making the change. It's not you telling them they have to change. But another piece of that comes from Dan Heath and Chip Heath. They're brothers, two of the finest writers of our day. They're just excellent. They wrote Made to Stick. Oh, come on. Decisive. Switch. I'm looking up on my bookcase over there. But they talk about if you want to make a change in your life, and that can be hard, you got to do three things. You got to direct the rider, motivate the elephant, and shape the path. Let me break this down very simply for you. You've got to direct the rider. That's the thinking brain. You've got to know what the change is, how you plan to bring about it, what's your plan of action, what's the end result, what's your model or that you're going to follow, whatever. Direct the rider. Make sure you're together on the change and how you plan to bring it about. But they talk about a rider on an elephant. Now, Aisha, I can get on an elephant and make that elephant go anywhere the elephant wants to go. I I cannot force an elephant to go someplace he or she does not want to go. Are you hearing me on this? So the elephant in this case is our emotional brain, our buy-in, our attachment to this change. We've got to make sure we've got good motivation, that there's a reward. We clearly understand the why that we're undergoing the effort to make this change. You got to direct the rider, motivate the elephant, and then you've got to shape the path. How are you going to get that elephant, that rider, to get to the end result? What are the steps that need to be involved? What are the timelines? Who else needs to be involved? What needs to change and when and so forth. So direct the rider, motivate the elephant, shape the path. You'll find yourself bringing about more change in your life than maybe you have in the past. And in terms of relationships, have healthier relationships.
Got it. Okay. That helps a lot. And yeah, when you said that you could tell an elephant what to do, I was really getting ready to so now that's a really great skill. So we're going to move into the Q&A portion. So anyone else that has questions, feel free to put them in the chat. And I see one that asks, do you do sessions with teens?
Do I have a quizzical look on my face, Aisha? The immediate answer is I have not. I have been a big brother in my time. I've had 5 little brothers. I like younger teens before they develop the attitude. But I'd be willing, whoever's asking that question, send me an email, ron@ronprice.com. I'll visit with you. And if I can't help you, I may know somebody else who does. But yeah, teenagers, boy, it's such an interesting time of life. They're trying to figure out who are they. And teenagers, a healthy teenager should rebel in some ways. They should be beginning that process of breaking free from mom and dad and deciding who they are by themselves. But boy, some people rebel. We all know this in dangerous ways, destructive ways, that it doesn't have to be ugly and unhealthy. It can be positive ways. So long answer to a short question. I don't specialize in teens, but I have some thoughts that might be helpful.
And I think even the first tip that you gave us about emotional hijacking, I think that is very prevalent with teens. And so, yes, I think your eyes
Did I
concur.
just do an eye roll?
You did indeed. And so I think, as you mentioned, a lot of times they are responding in a very emotional state and could benefit from we need a timeout for a couple of minutes, or languaging it differently, but being able to step away instead of responding and reacting when things are at that peak.
And again, the teenage years are so confusing. You got your peer pressure going on, and what direction do I want to go in life? And adulthood is on the horizon, which can be scary thought. You're not a little kid anymore, but you're not ready to have your own place and go out into the world. It's a very confusing time. So my best advice for a parent with a teenager is go off to breakfast some Saturday or Sunday morning, just the two of you. Just go out to have breakfast and do it on a regular basis, or go for a drive, or go play frisbee golf, or do whatever you like to do. But get into the world of your teenager. Keep those lines of communication open to where they know they can trust you and they can come to you with any question, and they're not going to get ridiculed or put down in any way. Kids are searching for answers, and unfortunately, too many of them are searching in the wrong places and getting the wrong answers.
Absolutely. So we've got about 5 minutes left. So if anyone has a question, you can feel free to place it in the chat. But in the meantime, I'm going to ask you a quick question. Ron, why do people dread conflict so much?
Saw a statistic one time, Aisha, that said 67% of Americans say they dread conflict. I think that number is low. I think those are the only ones who admitted it. Most everybody hates conflict. And so they try to avoid it. Well, as Dr. Phil would say, how's that working for you? I think the reason that people dread conflict is that they've experienced it before and it hasn't gone well. They didn't handle it well. They didn't know how to prevent the trivial. By the way, that's the play portion of my books and of my trainings. Play is a 4-step model to prevent trivial matters from blowing up on you and becoming a thing you don't need, want, or deserve. The nice is, how do you resolve significant differences that you are going to have with other human beings with whom you interact on a regular basis? But if you don't handle the conflict well, you could lose a relationship, you could lose a job or an employee, you could lose something that's important to you. So then in future years, you associate conflict with a deep sense of loss. Well, conflict's negative, I just got to stay away from it. Conflict handled well, Aisha, can be a positive. It can strengthen relationships. It can make for healthier workplaces. But again, most people, another reason they dread conflict, they've never been trained or equipped. How do you handle it? How do you manage conflict well? Prevent what you can, resolve what you must. And if you don't have training, you're probably not going to succeed. That's all. This isn't rocket science. So
here's a part 2 to the question, because I see in the chat the question was, so conflict is good, and you're saying yes. So what happens if in the past you've had a very negative experience with conflict? Because like you said, you didn't know how to handle it, or the other person didn't know, and you ended in a disaster. Is it possible to go back, or what is it that you can do?
Aisha, to be a mediator, you've got to be an optimist. You gotta believe that change is possible, growth is possible, improvement is possible. Now, does that to say that it's always possible? The answer is no, because you can't control anyone else. You, like me, are probably having enough fun. We're trying to control ourselves. That's enough of a battle right there. But we can try to manage relationships. So yes, if there has been a loss, a damaged relationship, somebody you were close to that you're not now, you can try to reach out to them and just let them know, hey, I miss you. I'm sorry. And own up. You can't reach out to them and say, you know what, if you're willing to ask my forgiveness, I'm willing to forgive you. That's not going to get you anywhere. You can just say, and you don't have to say, oh, I was terrible. You don't have to grovel. Again, it's going to be so situational, but a general is, you know what, I'm sorry that we're not in as close as we once were. I miss our relationship. And if you're at all willing, I'd love to talk to you about how we might reconnect at some point, and just keep it real basic, real simple, just an invitation, and see what they do with that. If they say, no, forget it, then all right, I would wait 6 months or so, and then I might try again.
And I think, as you said earlier, I guess it also depends on the relationship and how important it is to you.
Exactly
And so
right.
if it is something that you want to try to preserve or maintain.
Yeah. Have I got time? If I can do it in 1 minute, can I say one more thing?
Yes, and
Say
we have
no, I
one
dare you.
more comment. The challenge is
Oh,
conflict options for many isn't verbal but physical, and that
ooh,
causes the avoidance. More communication
yeah,
is needed, and it will
yeah.
change communities. So,
No,
okay, in 52 seconds.
all right. But thank you though. No, if it's violence, get out of it. Nothing that I've said is for violent, or if people are mentally, emotionally unstable. No, I'm talking about dealing with the most of us who are just basically messed up. Not, no, if it's a dangerous situation, don't try anything that I've shared. Know this: hurting people are going to hurt people.
Mhm.
They don't plan it, scheme it. They just, if I'm hurting, I'm going to take it out on somebody else. And I'm going to take it out on somebody who's close to me, somebody who's in striking distance. So if somebody's just said something to you or done something to you, rather than react, oh yeah, see if you can minister to their pain, see if you can figure out why they're hurting, and maybe you can help them in some way and preserve the relationship.
And that speaks straight to the last comment that says, would you relate embracing conflict with loved ones as an act of love, the willingness to be open and honest?
If you can do it genuinely, absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Can't fake it. Can't fake it. You got to be well motivated. You want them to be blessed as much as yourself. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Most
Thank you.
people, decent people in their heart of hearts, are willing to forgive and move on. They won't forgive and forget. You can't forget. But forgive and move on, yeah, it's always possible.
Thank you, Ron. So this has been, I know it went by super quick. I hope that you all received some good jewels as I did about emotional hijacking, about hidden issues, about the XYZ technique. And if you need to hear them again, we will be sending the replay out so that you're able to grab those jewels. And as Ron mentioned, if you have any specific questions or things that you want to dive deeper on, and Ron has some wonderful courses and other offerings, then you can email him. Is that correct? At
That is
ron
correct.
at ronprice.com.
That is. Might not get
Thank,
back to you right away, but I will get back to you, I promise.
thank you so much. And I'm also going to drop into the chat our YouTube channel. And so feel free to take a look there to see previous 20-minute trainings, as well as this one next week. And have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday, everyone.